And second side of your worksheet is the quadratic formula. So I know there's a lot of problems here, but very straightforward, a very simple skill, but you have to practice because mistakes are easy. Mistakes happen for sure in the quadratic formula just from accidentally misplacing a negative or something like that. So you might notice that just like on the other side of the worksheet, these you have to equal to 0. So for a parabola, if you put this into Desmos, you'd be seeing where the zeros are. You would be seeing where this parabola crosses through the x-axis. And so the quadratic formula will always work in standard form, but this happens often that they are not whole numbers. So I'm sorry that Carnegie does this to you. I did use a Carnegie worksheet and they will likely not be whole numbers, but sometimes they are. So over here, I'm going to show you what you should do always. We take our parabola equation, we set it equal to 0, and then using the negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, that formula uses a, b, and c. So we know that a for this equation is -3, b for this one is -1, and c for this one is 7. Now, I did give you a video with notes the other day. I called them big notes instead of tiny notes, but I gave you examples, hopefully with a little bit simpler of numbers. Actually, I don't think I even did that. Sorry, it's hard to come up with good ones. So if you need your notes, keep your notes out. If you want to rewrite the quadratic formula up here on this paper, you may, but your notes remind you, and Google reminds you, that we plug in negative the b value plus and minus separately the square root of b squared minus whatever 4 times a times c is, and that whole thing you divide by 2 times the a value. Now, I put parentheses before. You won't always see it with parentheses, but when you plug that in, you should put parentheses. So negative b, I have -1 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a and c. I'm putting in parentheses to represent multiplication. Here's my a value, -3, and my c value, +7. And I divide that whole thing divide the whole thing by 2 times a. After you plug it in, this is the answer. You're done, basically, but you just have to simplify it. So this is the answer. Let's simplify. -1 is +1 now. 2 negatives make positive. You're going to add and then subtract the square root of -1 squared is +1. This is where the minuses get difficult. This is technically a minus sign or a negative sign. So we are going to be subtracting this whole thing, or you can do -4 times -3 times 7, as long as you know that those two negatives will make a positive. So 7 times 3 is 21, 21, or -21. I usually like to ignore the negative. 7 times -3 is -21. And then -21 times 4, or times -4, is 84. And it has to be positive because it's minus turns into a positive. So now it's plus. Please make sure you don't forget that even if this is a negative sign, these numbers do not multiply. So if you plug this whole thing into your calculator, this is what's going to show up. It's minus -84. So maybe I just did an extra step for you. Minus -84. Okay, and then all of that is divided by -6. Now this is going to end up being the square root of 85, which is not a whole number, but we have 1 plus or minus the square root of 85 divided by -6. This is the answer. For many math students, they end here, but just like this book does, where they split it into 2 answers, I think you should do that, because don't forget that the plus or minus is literally an action. It's asking you to first add and then subtract. There's one where you add it and there's one where you subtract it. So you should split this into 2. It's either 1 plus this decimal, and I don't know what the square root of 85 is, 9 something, and then divided by -6. And there's also 1 minus the square root of 85 over -6. And this is the first x-intercept. You could also evaluate that, and this is the second. You do not need to find the decimal, though, so if you don't find the decimal, that's fine. This is our quadratic formula, and you might notice down here, these are not equal to 0. If your classmates are making a mistake because they didn't watch this video and you did, you need to set this equal to 0. This is not the C value because it's not equal to 0. How do we make this whole thing equal to 0? Well, we just subtract the 2. So if I minus 2 on both sides, now I have 2x squared plus 6x minus 9 equals 0, and now I can start. Now I have my A, my B, and my C. My C is actually -9. For this one, my C is not -1, it's -6 if you subtract 5 on both sides. This one is just a function you can set equal to 0. This one you'll have to subtract 5, etc., etc. So good luck with these. These are the last skills that you need to learn. These are just practice problems. If I need to email Miss Awad and tell you not to turn them in, oh my God, don't look. This is so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing, don't look. Not to turn them in, then I will. But really, just this is like, consider this the first 2 pages of your final exam practice packet. So you should make a study guide based on these things. Practice, 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 and I will post the key. Okay, bye.